Today, we're taking a pretty brutalist exploration into the mind of a guy who literally stripped away all our cozy utopian ideals just to reveal the chilling, totally unvarnished mechanics of real power. We're talking about Niccolò Machiavelli, of course, and how his gritty philosophy laid the exact groundwork for modern frameworks, like Robert Greene's famous 48 Laws of Power.
But to really understand the man, you have to picture the incredibly harsh world that made him. Just imagine being a 9-year-old kid back in 1478, witnessing this gruesome display of political dominance right in the center of Renaissance Florence. I mean, this wasn't some rare anomaly. This was the raw, everyday reality that forged our subject. From a very young age, he learned the absolute, fatal price of failing as a politician.
So, looking at that reality, you really got to ask yourself this critical question. Could traditional virtue, honesty, and Christian charity even exist in a society that's quite literally built on constant betrayal, mercenary warfare, and these sudden, violent executions? Well, for Machiavelli, the answer was a resounding no.
And that brings us to the menacing, isolated aura of the man himself. He's essentially history's original architect of ruthless political survival. He completely abandoned the idea that a leader should be measured by their moral goodness. Instead, he created this incredibly structured system built on deceit, cunning, and just single-minded determination.
Section 1. Chaos in Renaissance Florence. To fully grasp his dark philosophy, we've got to look at the absolute blood-soaked chessboard of the Italian city-states he called home. Machiavelli grew up in a place where the theoretical rules of government and actual reality were just wildly divergent. I mean, look at this timeline. It was a constant cycle of dictatorships, religious uprisings where figures like Savonarola were executed, and violent coups. In this environment, failing didn't mean losing an election, it meant losing your life.
Next up, the fall of a diplomat.
Despite the cartoonish villain reputation he has today, for over a decade, starting when he was just 29, this guy was actually Florence's top diplomat. He wasn't some shadowy evildoer locked in a tower. He was a highly capable administrator. He worked tirelessly to save a super fragile republic from massive European empires and ruthless warlords like Cesare Borgia. But here is the crucial turning point. Despite all that loyal service, his political career ended in total, absolute devastation. When the Medici family violently reclaimed power back in 1512, Machiavelli got swept up in the purge. He was accused of conspiracy, thrown into a cell, literally tortured with the strappado, and finally forced into permanent exile from the city he deeply loved. So he's stripped of all his power and totally isolated in this misty, dark countryside. He had absolutely nothing left but his brilliant mind and, frankly, his trauma. He channeled years of intense first-hand political observations into a manuscript, and he wrote it with one desperate, singular goal: to win favor with the Medici family and get his old job back.
Which brings us to his masterpiece, The Prince and Power.
This book completely and forever severed political theory from ethics. Machiavelli realized something incredibly profound here. He figured out that living by how the world should be, rather than how it actually is, will literally just author your own destruction. Think about it. If you play by the rules of some fake utopia in a world that is actually an unending, cynical knife fight, the ruthless people are going to destroy you every single time. He just completely ripped off the Band-Aid and stripped away the comforting illusion of the good king. He stated clinically, with zero apologies, that the only real measure of success in a brutal reality is the acquisition and maintenance of power, period. Building a great state required raw strength, not necessarily goodness.
Let's break down his core concepts: fear, virtue, and fortuna.
To navigate this incredibly treacherous world, he developed a deeply pragmatic, psychological framework, and he tackled the ultimate leadership dilemma head-on. We've all heard it. Is it better to be loved or feared? Now, he acknowledged that being both at the same time is the absolute ideal, but human nature makes that almost impossible to sustain. Because, as he bluntly put it, people are often selfish, cowardly, and easily bought. Love can vanish in an absolute instant when circumstances change, but the dread of punishment, that is permanent. He argued it's far safer to rely on fear because you control what people fear, whereas they control who they love. The only major caveat? You just have to ensure you are never truly hated, because hatred is the exact thing that breeds deadly conspiracies. And to maintain that kind of control, he believed life is this constant clash between two forces, fortuna and virtue. Fortuna is just unpredictable luck.
He famously compared it to a raging, destructive river that dictates half of everything we do. But we can actually tame that river through virtue. Now, virtue doesn't mean moral virtue, not at all. It means raw, adaptable human agency, boldness, and the sheer strength of character to build dams before the flood hits. You adapt or you die. That intense need to adapt builds perfectly into his concept of the beast within. He literally advised leaders to stop suppressing their inner animal. You have to fluidly switch between two states. You need the cunning and deception of a fox to recognize and outwit traps, and the terrifying brute force of a lion to scare off the wolves. And if honesty ever gives your enemies an advantage, you have to cast it aside immediately. Moving on to the timeless laws of power. You know, centuries later, author Robert Greene studied these exact historical dynamics for his famous book, The 48 Laws of Power. These modern laws are essentially Machiavellian realism distilled for today. Machiavelli taught the immense value of deceit, which Greene echoes perfectly in Law 14. He warned that enemies left wounded will always seek revenge. That's Greene's Law 15. This kind of psychological manipulation remains a highly effective, even if pretty unsettling playbook. Take Greene's Law 26, for example. Keep your hands clean. Machiavelli observed this perfectly in a real-world strategy by Cesare Borgia back in 1502. Borgia conquered a city and needed to pacify it, right? So he appoints a cruel deputy named Ramiro to execute all the dirty work. The executions, the property seizures. The citizens obviously developed this intense hatred for Ramiro. So what did Borgia do? He had Ramiro sliced in half and displayed right in the town square, basically claiming he was saving the people from a monster. Borgia got a peaceful city, the people's total awe, and his own hands remained perfectly clean. Brutal, but genius. Finally, let's look at the Machiavelli legacy. So what actually happens when you expose the darkest, unwritten rules of human ambition to the general public? Well, the reaction was fierce, and the book was completely self-defeating for his own career. It was denounced as Satan's finger, banned by popes, and he totally failed to win his old job back, dying seemingly insignificant. Yet, because he stubbornly refused to sugarcoat reality, kings, queens, and modern politicians have secretly mirrored his exact methods for centuries. Ultimately, what he leaves us with is a reality completely stripped of comforting illusions. He hands us this somewhat terrifying realization: we are walking alone, and we have total agency in a world governed not by some kind of divine fairness, but by ruthless strategy and our own actions. He totally scoffs at the idea that we can't control our own fates. Which leaves us right here. As you step back into your own day-to-day life, you really have to answer his most provocative challenge. Are you playing by the rules of utopia that doesn't actually exist? Or are you ready to face the world as it truly is? Think about it.